Hi, this is Chris with Leacris Computers. Today we're going to talk about disk defragmentation. I'm not going to get into a heavily technical, detailed discussion of how fragmentation happens on a hard drive, but it does. And in order to help you understand it better, I'm going to give you a real-life metaphor for disk fragmentation. I'm going to do this by comparing the file system on your hard drive to a file cabinet. So you have your file cabinet, and generally speaking, you have the drawers in some sort of order. And then as you open each drawer, you have a bunch of file folders in there, and they're in some kind of order. And then you open up your file folders, and all the documents and other things that are within those folders are in some kind of order. So everything is in order so that, well, in order that you can find things relatively quickly. You don't have to know exactly where everything is, but you know the system under which you filed it. And so using that system, you can find what you're looking for. When we talk about disk fragmentation, imagine, if you will, you have your file cabinet and it's all in order, but all of a sudden you don't really start paying attention to putting documents back exactly where they came from the first time. You start putting them back in there out of order. And so pretty soon, as you go through your system, you find that you can't find anything. Now, that's not exactly what happens in disk fragmentation, but that's a good real-world example. Now suppose that instead of putting your files back into your file folders in the right file drawer, you just threw them on the floor. In fact, let's just say you did that for a long time, and all your stuff is now on the floor. I hope you can see that it would now take you much longer to find whatever documents you were looking for than it did when you had everything in its correct folder in the correct drawer. Now imagine that every time you get a document, you tear it up into little pieces and throw those little pieces on the floor, and pretty soon you have a whole pile of little pieces on the floor with no complete documents. That's exactly what a fragmented file system looks like. It's a bunch of little pieces of files scattered all over your hard drive. And you can imagine the kind of overhead it would take for Windows to find all those little pieces, assemble them into files, and then deliver them, whether you're copying the files onto another drive or you're loading a program into memory. Imagine the overhead it takes Windows to gather that information together from all the little bitty pieces, as compared to just being able to go to one place and find a file. Now, of course, this analogy is not perfect because Windows still knows where all the little bitty pieces are. Unlike in our example with the filing cabinet, we just have a bunch of little pieces laying on the floor. We have no idea. So it's not as bad as the analogy, but it's still, as I'm sure you can understand, there's a lot of overhead to that. And so what a disk defragmentation program, what a defragger does, is it takes all those little pieces of files that are scattered all over your hard disk and it puts them back together into contiguous files. And so if you have a file that's split into 30 or 40 pieces, the disk defragmenter will take those 30 or 40 little pieces and it'll put them back into one file, so that Windows doesn't have to look in 30 or 40 places on the hard drive to get a file. It has to look in one, and it's off to the races. So disk defragmentation is important. We can see that just from that aspect alone. So what is the proper methodology for defragmenting a hard drive? Well, there is no set in stone proper methodology. Most defragmenters, left to their, if you just simply run them with their typical default settings, will do a fine job of doing what I've just described. They will put the files back together in the largest pieces that they can, and to make it easier on Windows to find them. Most defragmenters will also do what's called optimizing. The one I use in particular, MyDefrag, is the name of it, and you can download that. It's a free one. You can get it from a lot of places like the MyDefrag website, or you can go to filehippo.com. I like that to find popular freeware. They will also do what's called optimization, and so optimization is important because what these defragmenters will do is they will look at the number of times a certain file is used, and they will put the most used files onto the fastest part of the platter of the hard drive. And so that's important because the most often used files on the fastest part of the hard drive means better system performance. Now you can do that in an advanced method if you've not done any defragmenting in a long time. The proper methodology would be to first go into your advanced settings under your computer properties and set the page file to 0. Restart the computer, do your disk defragmentation, restart the computer, and re-enable your page file. And what this will do is it will let all of your data get put at the best part of the hard drive first, and that will all be defragmented and optimized, and then it'll put your page file back onto your hard drive, and that will keep your page file from being heavily defragmented. And that's really the only way to do that, because since the page file is a system file, it is locked during any kind of system file operation, not a system operation, but a file operation. And so the defragmenter is not going to defragment your page file. In fact, it won't defragment any locked system files, and there are quite a few. But the page file is really the big one. It takes up a lot of room, and it ends up being a big file, usually at least 2 to 8 gigabytes in size. So that's a pretty big chunk of disk real estate. So, and it has a great deal of impact on the performance of the computer too. Now, I believe in disk defragmenting. It really does help. But there are some things that a disk defragmenter won't do. Well, it's not that it won't do it. It's that it won't help. So situations in which a disk defragmentation won't really help are situations where you have a virus, a severe virus on your computer. It's not going to help the speed of your computer. If you have a ton of things being loaded on startup, it's not going to help. If you have a lot of adware and spyware, it's not going to help. So see, disk defragmenting is one of those things that when you want that, if you want to make sure you're getting the maximum benefit from its operation, then you have to take care of all these other issues first. This is why when we do our computer cleanups here at Leacris Computers, the disk defragmentation is the last thing we do, because we want to make sure everything else about the Windows system is in order and is operating properly. But if you do that first, if you do all the other things first and make sure everything is right, and make sure you don't have any adware or spyware or too many startup programs, then the defragmenting part makes the biggest impact on system performance. I've had many computers where I've gotten to that last step and I think, man, I just don't think this computer's ever going to run right. But run the disk defragmenter, boy, it just speeds it up like there's no tomorrow. It makes it run like a new computer. So if you have any questions about disk defragmenting, shoot us a line or give us a call at 919-518-6649, or check us out on Facebook, www.facebook.com/LeacrisComputers, or send us a text, or whatever you'd like to do. Until next time, we'll see you later.